Thank you, Councilman Whalen. Bob Goldsmith of Greenbaum, Rose Smith and Davis for Bijou Properties. And thank you, Mayor Mena, council members, people in the audience. Thank you for the opportunity to be heard. We think we presented a carefully crafted proposal. As was heard during the public session of the meeting, it's open to discussion and negotiation. Our goal is to balance vision, parking demand, public space, mixed use, and economic feasibility. We realize that there's a perceived need for parking in the borough of Red Bank, and our proposal contemplates a 600-space public parking facility, 200 parking spaces for a 200-unit residential development, approximately 200 residential units, 23,000 square feet of retail, significantly a 15,000 square foot public plaza. I don't know if you people are familiar with Heinz Plaza in Princeton. It's adjacent to the public library at the intersection of Hullfish and Witherspoon Streets. That site was a public parking lot, much like here. What was created there was a 15,000 square foot public plaza. It's a very active, very engaged public plaza just next to the library, in front of the retail and residential that was built as part of that redevelopment project. There's a parking garage next to it. Similar concept. And Princeton, as with Red Bank, had concerns about the nature of the project, what it would do. But it's wonderfully received. It's award-winning. And perhaps most notably, when you see that public plaza, the amount of public activity there on a routine basis, you realize that in itself is a tremendous asset. We embrace the concept of shared parking. We've created a public park. We'll be creating a public parking facility. Again, 200 dedicated spaces for the residents, but the 600 parking spaces on a shared basis we think would provide a great deal of relief to parking demand in the city, in the borough. I would be engaged in this process. I've had the benefit of being special counsel for a number of municipalities, including Princeton, Morristown, Millville, Robbinsville, Long Branch, but I also represent the private sector, and in this case I'm representing the private sector. But it's been of value to me because I have a recognition of what public concerns are, what political concerns are, but also what economic reality is. You'll be hearing, besides me, you'll be hearing from Larry Bijou, who is the principal of Bijou Properties, and also John Nastasi. Larry is knowledgeable, creative, and my experience is that he is very reasonable and fair-minded. So we just completed approvals for a 424-unit project in Hoboken, right next to the light rail station. We're giving the city of Hoboken 2 public parks, a gymnasium, and it's a mutually beneficial project. It was embraced by the city of Hoboken. Larry and his partner David Gaber have been very well received by the city of Hoboken. They've done a half a dozen projects in Hoboken, David. So they have a sensitivity to your political reality, as do I and as does our team. John Nastasi is a creative and practical architect, and we've intersected over the last few years. But something really relevant to downtown revitalization, redevelopment, is he has a keen sense of placemaking. Not just building a building, but building something that gets integrated into the community and creates assets and benefits for the community, for the citizens of the borough. I've been doing redevelopment for 39 years. I love it. I think there's great value in it. I recognize that there are concerns. Change is something that worries people. We did a project in Morristown, the old Epstein's department store. There was concern about it. Perhaps most notably, it stabilized taxes in Morristown for the last 5 years. Langdon is our engineer on the project, and they're an incredibly broad and deep engineering firm with broad-based facilities and resources available to us. Let me say, Bijou does cutting-edge design, development. They are focused on sustainability. They're dedicated to it, and all of their projects have significant elements. I'll let the others speak to that. It is an entity that's singularly well respected in Hoboken. And if you know Hoboken, Hoboken is very concerned about the type of development taking place there. They don't want to be Jersey City. They want it to be a community-based development. So we're accustomed to that. We respect it. And we recognize that there are those concerns here. Just a clarification, on a payment in lieu of taxes, the municipality keeps 95%, 5% goes to the county. The reality is, the history, and your experts I think will confirm this, that these projects generate very few school children. I could give you some examples of that. Rutgers did a study about 15, 20 years ago. They said 5 school children per 100 units. That's actually probably high. If you know Morristown, we have 131 apartments that generated 3 school children. We had 149 apartments, generated 2 or 3 school children, one of actually who moved there so he could attend private schools. So the historic data, and there's a great deal of it, is very few school children are generated by these projects. And if you think about it, this isn't New York, this is New Jersey, and most people, when you get kids get old enough to make noise, they want them in the backyard. So that is not the demographic that comes to these facilities. It's typically young urban professionals, empty nesters, and the third group I hear is divorced people who need a place to live for a year or 2. We are asking for a pilot. Our goal is to finance the public parking facility, but to help with that, we're proposing a redevelopment area bond, a nominal redevelopment area bond. There are rigid structures in place for payments in lieu of taxes. It is 2% of project cost, which is often a very high number, sometimes even greater than taxes, or 10% of gross income. If you do a redevelopment area bond, and we're talking about a nominal redevelopment area bond, $50, $100, $150,000, you are released from the constraints of the statute. We can then negotiate the payment in lieu of taxes. And we would bear the cost of the redevelopment area bond, and to facilitate it, we'd probably buy the redevelopment area bond. Rather than take any additional time, I'll pass it on to Larry Bijou, who is the fair-minded person I was talking about.
Thank you, Robert. And thank you for inviting Bijou Properties to make this presentation. I started my company in '99. I'm the founding partner. We started on the premise of, as far as development goes, community input, community givebacks, and green building. So I'm early on the. I was early on the green building strategy. We became one of the leading green builders in New Jersey and the Northeast. We have all of our projects are green, are LEED Gold or higher. We have several LEED Gold projects. We're working on our second platinum building, and we're also doing an international what they call a passive house, which is the highest energy building in the national. It's recognized around the world. So that's in Hoboken as well. And the problem, you know, Hoboken, I had so much, the north end of Hoboken, I had so much to work with, and I just never managed to leave. Recently, we ventured out to Morristown. We were invited to a project next to the train station. And also this project is something that really interested us as well. You had some of your requests in the proposal for green building. It's right up our alley in that sense. We do most of our projects, all of our projects are LEED projects. No, we don't do green aspects or green things. It's all according to the LEED process. So all our buildings are, have things like, low CO2, low CO2 emissions, high energy efficient units, low flow fixtures, high ceilings, lots of light and air, and we use interchange materials, quality materials. I use metals, wood metals, copper sometimes. We use steel, Corten steel a lot. So most of our products stand the test of time. So our buildings look as good today as they did 10 years ago. And I think that's important in any project in a town like in the borough of Red Bank. So, also, I'd just like to say we have been recognized nationally in Washington, D.C. for a couple of our projects, smart growth and transit-oriented development. And we've been getting larger every year. Right now we're doing, like Bob said, we're doing a transit-oriented business with next to New Jersey Transit station with 424 units. This is the largest redevelopment in Hoboken in years. We were able to put that together. We gave, our give back there was 2.5 acres. We did also gave back a 6,500 community center, which is it's a very large project. So, you know, we work well with the cities that we, especially with Hoboken, and I'm sure in borough of Red Bank as well. I think we could be a real asset here. So we're very interested in this project. So thank you.
Thank you, Larry. John.
Thank you very much. So my name is John Nastasi. I'm the architect for this project, and I will try my best in a few minutes to explain this first design for you guys. I'll take it. So what I'll do is I'll walk you through some of the early ideas, and the one thing I do want to tell everybody that what I'll present is really just the first sort of idea to put out to the public, and the objective is to just get feedback. It's not, this isn't the right answer. This is the first proposal. So if I start, we'll start by looking down at the site. And one thing I want to explain is that when we were organizing our design proposal, what's really important as an architect is not only what you do, but what you don't do. And the hardest thing as an architect is to not do something. So I want to explain our scheme. I'll start at the back of the site at Monmouth Street. I think we all realize how successful Monmouth Street is, the beautiful venues that are on Monmouth Street. Our objective is to take a Monmouth Street extension and bring it through the site to White Street to connect Monmouth Street to White Street, so that if this is the site in mind, we don't want to build on the whole site. We want to make sure Monmouth Street extends through. The second thing I'm very excited about is to take the beautiful Broad Street, which I think is just a fantastic architectural street with great character, great scale. We'd like to take the character and success of Broad and move it through the site this way, so that people shopping and dining on Broad can come down White and move through our project through a colonnade and promenade of continuous retail along White Street. But what's really important that it's at the scale and character of Broad, so that the front of our building is a continuation of the scale. So we want to bring the Monmouth Street extension through. We want to bring Broad Street, the character of Broad Street, this way. The third thing is...
Just that's the Drum & Place extension.
Yes.
Monmouth Streetscape.
Yes. English Plaza is also another fascinating thing for us. I understand culturally what you guys do here. We would love to extend that, the public plaza, onto the property. We know that the Dublin House is back here, has the rear terrace. We know that the events you guys have in English Plaza. We'd like to propose a very large public community plaza here. So if you think about it, we're bringing streets through, the scale and character of Broad Street through this way, and then the cultural and social character of English Plaza this way. And we haven't even done anything yet, but we made sure we figured out how we want to carve space out to let the fabric of the city come back in. So the way the project will be organized is that from Broad you come this way, and there's a continuous colonnade of retail along White Street. So White Street is continuous retail, starting of course with the public plaza, which is open up to the rear terrace of Dublin House, English Plaza. This is our retail. Here's the street extension, and then our municipal garage is over here to the west. So if you're coming into town, you can come into the municipal garage, get all parked here before you start to descend into the city. We then stack the municipal parking here. We have multiple levels of parking over the top of retail. And then our residential component sits on top of a two-story base. And what we're trying to do is take the brick and architectural character of Broad Street, come this way, so we have a beautiful brick colonnade here, which matches Broad Street. And then the residential component, which sits on top, is set back off the street. But more importantly, it's staggered, it's broken down, it steps in and out. We're trying to break the scale and character of the residential component of the project so that it's not one big massive building on White Street. You don't want to do that. You want to break the scale and character of the building on White Street. So moving to the next step, we have our green terraces for the residents. The upper green terraces, we're collecting rainwater. You have your municipal garage. And I think what we get here is a layered project that starts by responding to the scale and character of Red Bank. What we're very excited about is the non-building, the empty space, the public plaza, the events that can go on, how English Plaza can extend into the space, how places like the Dublin House and establishments along the east side can plug into the plaza, and how the retail base lights up at night and sort of energizes Red Bank. The metrics are all here in response to the RFP. And again, it's only the first step. This is really just the first pass. 200 units on top of 200 parking spaces, 600 municipal parking spaces, 25,000 square foot public plaza, retail colonnade, and I think that's pretty much what we're presenting here as a first crack. On time?
3 minutes. You want
3 minutes?
Any other comments?
You probably make
or-
a trade with another presenter.
I'll give you the 3 minutes back. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bijou Properties again, they were first. Next, we have B&E Real Estate Group to present the second out of the 5.
This is an extra 2 PPRs, because there's no way I'm going to be able to do it. I was going to say, yeah, 'cause I knew tonight was going to be a long one.
And for the record, Leslie London is here. She is our redevelopment attorney, just to let everybody know.
It's only 100 did the council meeting.
Hello. So I'm Jonathan Schwartz, with principal with B&E Real Estate Group. This is Jack Teicher, one of the principals of Canoe Brook Development. Thank you very much for having us. We are very excited about the prospect of developing this site. It's one of the more exciting sites that we've seen in many years. I'm going to spend a couple minutes just telling you a little bit about both B&E and Canoe Brook. I think just as important as the design of the project is the team behind it and the experience with these types of large-scale, complicated projects. So B&E is a third-generation, fully integrated, full-service development firm. We've been building in the state since 1955. We've built upwards of 25,000 residential units in the state, 10,000 of which have been rental apartments, not too dissimilar to stuff like this. We currently are developing in towns all over the state, about a 2,000 unit pipeline. Towns similar to this, we're pretty far along on a project in Aberdeen, which is the redevelopment project on the Aberdeen-Matawan train station, 272 apartments. Complicated, long development project, not too dissimilar to what we have here. So we're very familiar with the redevelopment process. B&E also does everything sort of in-house. We are our own legal department, our own general contractor and construction managers, our own property managers. We build everything with an eye of keeping long-term. Our entire apartment portfolio was built and we still own. So when we build these types of projects, we're really focused on the finishes and the detail and making sure it's going to last forever. I want to talk a little bit about Canoe Brook. I can, I'll speak a little bit and then Jack can jump in. Canoe Brook is comprised of the principles or the founding principles of Roseland Property Company, which was purchased by Matt Calley. Canoe Brook is responsible for thousands of units of redevelopment projects throughout the state. Projects like Port Imperial in Weehawken in West New York. They were responsible for the redevelopment projects, not too dissimilar to this as well, where they included public-private parking partnerships in Morristown and New Brunswick.
We were the developer referenced earlier in the presentation that built the FC redevelopment in Morristown. Similar to this project, Morristown had brought us into the community to redevelop and add about an 800 space public parking lot that was assembled behind multiple for sale and rental buildings. We similarly built a public deck for Morristown for the train station, and then built a public parking deck along the community theater and restaurant. So we have a lot of experience with developing parking needs that work in concert with residential.
So yeah, we just, we've got not just experience building all over the state, but really build redevelopment projects as well. So we're designated redevelopers in Harrison, New Jersey, East Rutherford. We're under construction on a redevelopment project in Englewood. Like I mentioned, Aberdeen. These guys, all the projects they had mentioned. So I think it's just important to understand sort of who's behind these projects, and because these projects are not just complicated. They take a lot of expertise and financial resources to really actually get them going, built and completed. So I think Jack's going to spend a little bit of time sort of walking you through the plan and our vision for the project.
So our primary objective in designing this proposal was to create a project that really was as appropriate in scale and to the aesthetic of the downtown as possible. Obviously, we had the goal of creating as much public parking as necessary. We had, we committed ourselves in designing this project to deliver at least 700 public spaces, and secondly, to keep the residential building to a maximum of 6 stories. So, to that end, on the residential building, what we're proposing is a 6-story building. It is 204 apartments with 208 parking spaces in the building. On White Street, and this is further from Broad Street, on White Street, the majority of the first 2 floors are lined with apartments, and and back on the western portion is the entrance to the garage, and on floors 4 through 6 are rental, the rest of the apartments, as well as amenity package and 3 outdoor amenity decks. We spent a lot of time working on the facade to make sure that it fit in character with the town. So we were careful to make sure that we did a break at the 4th floor, which is a very human scale from a pedestrian perspective for most projects, at about 45 feet. So we broke the building back at the street edge on White Street and set the 5th and 6th floors back off the street. We spent a lot of time focusing on developing parapets and cornices and masonry details that we really thought were consistent with Broad Street and really pulled the character around the corner of the town. The parking deck, the parking deck we designed so that it is a separate structure. While it looks attached and the scale of the project keeps it as short as possible, it is a detached structure. It is subdividable. We were committed to developing the garage as quickly as possible and being able to hand the keys back to the town, so to speak, so that the garage could open as fast as possible while we were still developing the rest of the apartments. In the garage, we would, to accommodate the parking of the residential, we would request that approximately 98 spaces be made available to our tenants for rent on a monthly basis, but it's not, we're not asking to have them dedicated to us. Just to show you a bit of scale on the ground floor. As we said, the parking garage, the most efficient part of the site plan that puts as many spaces per floor. The goal here is really to get as many spaces per floor to keep the scale as low as possible. The best shape of the garage is on this side. It's perfectly rectangular, allows for good ramping, and still provides access on the back, and I'll get to that in a second. But we kept the garage to the eastern side of the site, so it's as close to Broad Street as possible. It is a 7-story garage with a lobby and elevator tower on the corner. Access would come off of White Street on a 2-way road, bisecting the site, and you'd have access both in here and off of an extension in the back. Access to the garage for the residential building is all the way to the edge to try to keep this as nice of a street front as possible. There is public space in front of the lobby area and along the edges of the garage. We were very careful in designing the plan to make sure that we accommodated all of the neighbors on Monmouth Street. So we looked at the existing alley easement at Drummond Place, and we made sure that the circulation for the site comes through. You can come up here, down this way into the garage, this way into the garage, and everyone has access along Monmouth Street to their rear yard, so no one is cut off. And we scaled it as best we can to provide that access and to make sure that we made a parking deck as efficient as possible. The apartment building on the 3rd floor up is a W-shaped building with 3 courtyard decks. This was designed similar, as you can see on this project. This was designed to scale the building back. So it scales back in 2 locations here, and on the street level, it comes back and it's set back above the 4th floor. The units, as we imagine them, will be as highly finished. Will be the highest finished units in Red Bank. The amenity deck, we'd have a full amenity package with 3 outdoor spaces. We pride ourselves in really taking a lot of time on the unit plans in the apartments themselves to make sure that as we further engage with the community and understand who exactly we feel is the right renter, that we make sure that we're sizing the 1 bedrooms and the 2 bedrooms and circulating them and creating floor plans that maximize the footage on each in each unit type. And that's really important to us because as I said before, the demographic for these types of projects in walkable communities is really an interesting gamut of tenant, and they're very supportive of downtowns, and they're great for communities. And as mentioned before, they usually limit on traffic and they limit on school children. So they're great demographics, but it's important to us to make sure that we do the best we can to differentiate the different bedroom count plans to make sure that they're as ideal as possible.
One thing I want to add is we chose not to include any retail in our proposal. We thought that it was important to develop something that's really going to be supportive of the current retail and not bring in additional retail that's going to compete with it. So we felt strongly, I mean, if it's something the town wants and to be a part of the plan, we certainly can do it. And we own a lot of, and have built a lot of mixed-use projects with retail on the ground level, but we thought it was important to bring something that's going to support the current retail.
I mean, there's the garage is designed to that point. It's designed with flexible space on the first floor. There is non-garage space on the first floor. But since the point of the project was to support the local businesses, we felt that adding more retail was not necessarily, it was counteractive to the intention of the process. Our project, it's as Jonathan said, it's a complicated development project, but we really tried to keep this as simple as possible. The garage is, again, fully subdividable. Our intention is to finish it, subdivide it, deed it back to the borough, and give the borough back the keys. The building is a efficient, economically viable building. It's a great project. It's going to be a beautiful project, but it's a fairly straightforward project to build. We are not relying on any outside monies. We are not. We are making sure that we've already accommodated our neighbors the best that we can tell. We provide access. We are absolutely planning to comply with the inclusionary housing as is required by the borough. So we've kept this as straightforward of a project as possible.
Something I just also want to add is Jack had mentioned we put a lot of thought into the unit layouts and square footages and finishes. So there's lots of developers that build a lot in the more urban environments and a lot that build in more suburban environments. We've both built thousands upon thousands of units in basically every county north of, let's say, Ocean County, all over the state. So we're building in Essex and Morris and Somerset and Bergen and Monmouth and Ocean, and all of those markets sort of need they require different unit mix and different unit sizes, and I think we understand what what's required and who the renter is going to be here. And you'll see and we welcome anyone who wants to tour any of our projects as well to come and take a look at what we've done.
Yeah, as Jonathan said, it's important to us that we just because a project is in a walkable community doesn't mean that it's an urban project. And we have experience building high rises in Jersey City and Manhattan, and we have experience building beautiful large apartments in suburbia, and that blend of the two is very important. And I think it'll be very successful in this community.
Did we mention it's 204 units?
Yes,
sure. Okay.
I think so.
Yeah. So that pretty much wraps up our presentation. I thank you very much for having us, and like I said, we're very, very excited about the prospect of developing this project.
Thank you, everyone. Up again, B&E Real Estate. And next we have Dobco.
Here, for a handout. What's going on?
Who knows? How fast it's moving this now. Oh, It's very supportive. I was at a group on this weekend, and they were hardcore. Very intense.
So think about what the priority is. Want to see some sort of world open to ideas about it. So
Yeah, how can you be against something when you don't put there?
I don't care.
Right, just don't want it. Really never press it here. However, I think we're banking on closing mindedness of the people to have it. So what is the budget for the moment? Because the budget has that's
All right, everybody, Dowco's going to begin. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for having us, everyone. My name is David Duchovny, Business Development Manager from Dopco. We're going to be talking about our project here from Red Bank at the White Street parking lot. I'm not going to tell you a lot about the company as a whole. What I want to talk about is more of the public spaces that are going to be used by the residents, people of the town, people visiting here. We talk about the interior configuration of residential units. I think they kind of explain themselves. And then an outline. I'm going to go through the outline, and then I'm going to touch base with the closing. So, okay. The topics I'm going to cover tonight, there's going to be 7 of them. One is the overall project concept. The next one is the public parking garage and land that will be owned and operated by the Borough of Red Bank, meaning that the Borough of Red Bank will retain the full ownership of the entire 2.29 acres. They'll also own and operate the garage. We're proposing 3 public spaces, outdoor spaces. We call them plazas, parks. We'll also be talking about the proposed ground floor retail and office space. And we're going to be also talking about the estimated construction durations that can be expected from the construction process from design to completion. We're also going to touch base on the impact of possible infrastructure to the city. And we're going to close with the benefits to the residents of Red Bank and the borough. So to discuss the first item, the overall overview of the project concept. Project concept is a teaming of 4 entities. HACS is our engineer and architect of record. High Concrete, they're a precast fabricator and erector. They'll be providing the services for the garage construction. Capital One Bank is going to be helping us with the financing. And ourselves, Dopco, as the developer. The project itself is a mixed-use project. To define mixed use, if you may not know, it's combining of multiple uses into one entity. So here is an example. We have the parking garage. We have the retail space, which we have at the ground level. And we have also the co-working office space that's also located in the ground level. And then we have the upper end, at the 6th, 7th, and 8th floor is the residential rentals. The parking garage, as you see here, is 5 stories. We have the capacity for 110 parking spaces in the parking garage. I'm sorry, 1,010. A little bit more than 100. You have more than you have currently. The 3 ground level public parks. One is at the easterly side, the westerly side, and I'll discuss a little bit detail where we thought the vision for the third. And we'll go over that when we hit the site plan. The ground floor retail is 38,000 square feet. It's stretching along White Street and abuts the 2 plazas on the east and west end of the project. The residential units, there's 177 proposed residential units. We have some flexibility of increasing or decreasing that amount depending on the square footage of the unit that's being proposed. We have 132,000 square feet of residential units. They're comprised of 92 studio apartments, 73 one-bedroom apartments, and 12 two-bedroom apartments. I'll go a little bit more detail on that a little bit later. Of those apartments, 142 of them are market rate, and 35 are affordable housing, meeting the requirements requested in the RFP from the city. Next section we're going to cover, public park space. Public park space, once again, is going to be comprised of 3 ground level public parks. In the front, what we have is an oversized sidewalk. We pull back, okay, and step the building back 10 feet, increasing the availability for outdoor dining possibly, seating, public use, all right? Or when you have venues in town that you need extra space for public gathering. We've also located areas for gourmet food trucks. It's a trend that is evolving, up and coming. We've provided parking for such at these locations here. It's in the location in the area where the largest public space is, on the easterly side. The vision here is to get people to come out, use the space, occupy the space, move through the space, have the availability through the centrally located nature of this particular project, which is, I call it kind of the midpoint of Red Bank, an area to go and dine and enjoy themselves in the public plaza space there. Those areas will have, once again, tables, chairs, benches. We're also proposing a connection, and you can see it here, located on Monmouth Street, and we're going past the restaurants and through the access alley, continuing through the plaza, and then we're going to end up continuing up towards the park, and we'll get into that a little bit later when we look at the major site plan. Parking garage. The parking garage RFP had some requests for some specific items. DOTCO has made it its point to follow through and try to meet each one of those items that were requested in the RFP. So a lot of these items we're going to talk about were put into the RFP. We could add them or we could retract them, depending on the flavor of the city and its residences. There was a request for 200 car charging stations in the RFP. We've provided the rough conduits and the number of charging stations that may be requested in this proposal.
200.
The smart parking technology has also been incorporated into this. It allows you to identify parking space availability, how many per deck, where the spaces are open. If you've been in some garages, there's newer ones, they have, when you drive down, different lights at the spots. Red would mean occupied, green would be available. As a driver coming into the parking garage, as a resident, you could look down, you look at the green light, and you go, oh, I see a spot down there, I'm going to drive down and park my car. All right, so some smart technology for parking. We provided also in the RFP bicycle rack storage for the residents and also storage for the local residents that reside in the city, providing bike racks to encourage bicycle riding, pedestrian movement, once again in the RFP. As far as the operations of the facility, we provided LED lighting. It's to reduce the cost of maintenance and also reduce the cost of operations. Okay, we've exceeded the requirement of providing 500 net parking spaces. We've designed 1,010, very good, 1,010 parking spots. And in doing so, we're going to hand over the entire 1,010 parking spots to the city for use by the public, and as also a use of generating revenue. DOTCO isn't looking for any money from the operations of those. We've provided vehicle and pedestrian access from White Street to Monmouth Street. We've made a connection, similar to some of the other proposals. Our connection is actually covered by the parking garage. If you look at the parking garage, we try to maximize the size, the shape, to be very efficient. If you look at our numbers as far as efficiency for parking garage to square footage, we have a very good ratio. So that's why our garage is in the shape it is, and it's a very efficient shape. That's also why it goes over top of the new cut-through. That's pedestrian access and also vehicle access. Parking garage access is also, to be noted, not directly off of White Street. There's a request in the RFP that we didn't come off of White Street directly into the parking garage. We've created a secondary access, okay, between Monmouth and White, and we're entering into the garage up a ramp and then come through and loop around. Gives you availability to have a safer entranceway in and out of the facility. So we were cautious of that in the RFP and the proposal. Retail component and the co-working office space. We're providing, once again, 38,000 ground floor retail and collaborative office space. Collaborative office space, that's going to attract entrepreneurs, small business owners, professionals, independent contractors, and business travelers. What you're going to get is the availability to have a section of this for office space that's commingling. It's not a designated office to a company. It could be leased by the day, the week, a month. There's many of those throughout the country now, and they're very, very conducive to doing business. People that may not have office space. What that's going to do for the city of Red Bank, it's going to attract what I call walking wallets. So you get people coming into the city, they're conducting business in the city, they use the office space for a little while, making copies and such. They're there, they come, they spend money, they need lunch, and they're out and about into the city. So they're intermingling amongst the other businesses. Okay, the proposed uses, we don't have anybody set aside for the retail currently. Based on this is a hypothetical proposal, but my vision, I would see similar businesses that would complement the current businesses in the area. So small shops, cafes, retail spaces, that type of thing I see here. And this space can be divided up into any square footage allotment accordingly. Construction durations. We think that the design portion and permitting and approval process will probably be between 6 and 9 months. We estimate the overall construction to be about 18 months, and we believe we could construct the parking garage in approximately 6 months. We're looking at the opportunity to obtain a TCO on the parking garage portion of it, to get it up, get it constructed, get it back to the use to the city, and the people that live here, to inconvenience them as little as possible. We're also talking to our fabricators to see if we could phase this in 2 phases of the parking garage, leaving one section of the parking garage possibly open for use while we construct the other section and reconfigure it accordingly. And we're in the process of discussing that now with them. Impact on infrastructure. Once again, as far as the infrastructure goes and the concern for increased taxes, school children, we designed the studios, small studio rental spaces, 92 units, 52% of them studios, 73 of them 1-bedrooms, and 12 of them as 2-bedrooms. We don't believe you're going to get a big impact as far as on the school system and the need for increased taxes on that entity because of the size of the units and they're smaller. As far as the infrastructure itself, utilities, we are aware that the utilities in Red Bank's been around for a long time, they're older, they're tired, all right? And as a project of this size may require us to do some improvements in some of the utilities. So we have the expectation that coming in here, when we do the investigation, that we're gonna have to look at the size of the water lines, sewer lines, gas lines, electrical lines, and we're ready to go through and take on that aspect and the possible costs that are involved in that. All right, I'm gonna close with the benefits to Red Bank, and how am I doing on time?
You got 6 minutes.
I got plenty of time, we're good. Okay, touching on the benefits, I'm going to recap some of what I spoke about. We're providing 35 affordable housing units to the city of Red Bank. It's 20% per the RFP. We've exceeded the 25% public open space. We're providing approximately 30% as far as open space goes. The design materials, color palette, we're open. Okay, we've proposed a concept because we need to put something up on paper, but at which point we realize that the architecture in Red Bank is very classic, and we want to conform to that. We would be open to meet with the council, the mayor, get public feedback on what the vision of the people of Red Bank have, and we would love to incorporate that into the elevations and make whatever suggestions come through the process and incorporate them accordingly. I've already talked about 38,000 square foot ground floor retail. I think it's important to include retail up and down White Street. If you look at Monmouth Street, it has a lot of retail on it now, shops. It's a lively street. This street has just a parking lot and some smaller businesses and not a lot of life. We think at which point bringing in the public park spaces, additional retail, I think they're going to feed off what's here already existing and enhance the area and create that loop that one of the developers were talking about prior, about connecting the street and the city and enhancing it. Talking about the third part, reconfiguration. We provided one of the largest counts in parking, 1,010 units. And in doing so, we provided a park at the furthest westerly end, an oversized sidewalk. This is being the second plaza connecting to the existing restaurant and Monmouth Street. We've noticed at which point you have a great park that's up on the river, and there's a concern in the RFP about walkability and connecting the Monmouth Street and White Street, making the availability for bicycling and walking. Well, what we've created is a corridor that's pedestrian access. Some cities like Cape May have layouts like these, where they close down a street and the streets thrive because of the retail and the pedestrians and the walkability. And we think at which point we're going to sacrifice some parking, okay? It's a little shy of 60 parking spots from what we can tell from Google Earth. And we're going to reconfigure the layout. We know that some of these properties are owned and have private parking for the business owners. We think we could create a nice pedestrian access here for some of those nice festivals I hear that Red Bank has. And that allotment would connect from the river to Monmouth Street and be the open public space that I think you guys are looking for. once we put this parking garage and retail space in here. I think we've given back quite a bit, and I think it does nothing but enhance the area connecting to the waterfront. In closing, DOPCO would very much welcome any additional conversations with the mayor, the council, the residents, the parking garage committee, to go through this starting point to create a great project that enhances the borough of Red Bank, its residents, businesses, and provides easier parking, because I had to walk about 4 blocks to get to this point because I couldn't find a spot. So in closing, we would very much enjoy the opportunity to work with Red Bank and continue the conversation. So I want to thank everyone again tonight for coming out. Here are my spiel and my 110 parking spots. Sorry about that. It's been a long day.
And just to add what Dave said, my name is Hussam Ibrahim. I'm the vice president and one of the principals of DOPCO Incorporated. We have done very, very similar projects like this in Melbourne, New Jersey, in Hackensack. We feel very confident we can accomplish this easily and, be a great project for the city and for DOPCO, and, we make you happy, and we're looking forward to it. We're looking to this project to be building an environment and a place that we all can enjoy, not just units, not just parking. It's something combined for all. So we really thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, guys.
That was DOPCO again, and next is Mill Creek.
The existing parking lot will only take probably about 20% of the Anything else? Good? Thank you. Appreciate it. A lot of hard work with that. Thank you. USB is there. Good.
we get everybody's attention, Mill Creek is about to begin. Mill Creek.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having us. My name is Anthony Volpe. I'm Vice President of Development for Mill Creek Residential. And our proposal also has 110 parking spaces in it as well. I'll start with a little bit of background on Mill Creek. Mill Creek is a national multifamily developer of luxury rental homes. We're all across the country. We've built approximately 28,000 apartment homes over the last 6 years. In this region, in the New Jersey, New York region, we have either built or under construction or in some planning phase of around 2,000 apartments. And we're building in places similar to Red Bank, very strong demographic, great towns with great reputations, walkable downtowns where people really want to live. We're in Morristown, where we're doing 2 phases in a redevelopment area, which would be very similar to this. We've also built in Jersey City, where we did an adaptive reuse of a 100-year-old warehouse. We are also building in Parsippany, New Jersey, Yonkers, New York, and out in Long Island in Mineola. One of the most noteworthy projects that we're doing or have done is the Morristown project, which right now we're in our 2nd phase of a 3-phase redevelopment. The first project was 268 apartment homes. The 2nd phase, which is currently under construction, is 185 apartment homes. And I bring that up because Morristown is a very vibrant community, just like Red Bank is. Very strong demographics. Everyone wants to be there, and we think it's a very comparable project. As I mentioned, that is in the midst of, it's a redevelopment area, just like this would be in Red Bank. And as part of that project, we are also building public parking that we are giving back to the Parking Authority of Morristown. Mill Creek properties tend to be a very high-end luxury rental home. We tend to outbuild the market wherever we go and kind of overdo it with the amenities. And our properties, when you walk into one, we like it to feel more like a boutique hotel than really a traditional apartment community. And we would welcome anyone from Red Bank to come, council members, mayor, residents, to come and visit any of our properties and see what we're doing. With me today is Chuck Chappell from Minot and Wasco Architects. They are a very active architecture firm all over New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York. And Chuck's going to talk a little bit about the concept that we've come up with Red Bank, which we think is really exciting. Also with us is Jim Zullo. He is with Tim Haas Parking Consultants. Because parking is such a significant part of this particular development opportunity, we thought it was important to engage with Tim Haas and Jim early on in the process. Tim Haas Consultants is a parking design and consulting firm. They work with both municipalities as well as private developers to really come up with the kind of parking to develop the parking facility in the most cutting-edge way and make it the most efficient and also the most economical for the municipality. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Chuck.
Hello, thank you very much. Yes, thank you so much for having me here this evening. Appreciate it. Yeah, you can click through to this. As you can see, we all know that White Street redevelopment plan. I really kind of put this slide together to get an idea of really all the activity that actually happens in Red Bank in general. And with this being said, we understand the need for parking. It is such a large component of what actually happens here within Red Bank, but we don't want that to hinder anything for the future. So really, part of our main concern and working with consultants to understand what is really necessary, how can we achieve this parking without anything detrimental to Red Bank in general. So we can move on. With that being said, what we really looked at was how we could achieve the parking that's actually required, or parking that's really necessary for the city and for the borough. And at the same time, actually making sure that we can actually accommodate what Mill Creek is looking for. Now, this big concept actually has 170 dwelling units. As you can see, it really has a certain portion of the garage deck that's actually lined by units. Now, these are 2-story units that actually kind of give you the certain scale of the street. That's really what we're looking for. Townhouse units that actually have a front stoop that actually give you that recognition that this really isn't a different building. Now, we didn't include any retail in here. Again, we didn't want to compete with the existing retail. We wanted to actually bring more people to Red Bank in general to kind of feed what's already there for the most part. The parking deck in general, as you can see, this parking concept actually has 779 spaces. It is 8 stories. But again, what we did is we actually tied this garage deck, knowing that that number of spaces at any given time could actually be filtering out into the city. We want to make sure that you actually have good access to the streetscape and that it isn't causing any kind of bottlenecks anywhere. So we propose connecting a Drummond Place extension and actually bringing it out to White Street. So our garage consultant can really talk about those numbers and really to kind of give a flavor of what's actually necessary. Whether the 779 is something that the city really needs, I think what we really need to do is work with the garage consultant, the traffic consultant, to really understand the true number, what it is. Is it 700? Is it 800? Is it 500? So I think we really need to kind of really investigate that, working with the township, working with the borough, working with the traffic consultant, can help us really understand that true need. As you can see, the residential building in general is an E-shaped building that does provide the 170 units, but with that unit there's also amenity package, 3 outdoor courtyards, 2 passive potentially, 1 active courtyard. Again, these are angled towards the residents for the most part, so we kind of really have to understand what their real need is and what we can try to give back to the township in general. So, you can actually see here, we actually activated the architecture here. Now, the architecture really is reminiscent of classic Red Bank, but we also want to touch on what's actually happening in New Red Bank. You see there's a little bit of an edge of the classic feel where we actually use rich materials. We're using the brick, the cast stone, all that kind of stuff to really activate, to kind of remember what really created Red Bank, what really stands for, the durability of that product. And again, we really also want to think of what's happening in the future. We're using metal panel, we're using a variety of cementitious panels to really kind of give you a flavor of what's going on. Even here, we activated the garage deck. We really wanted to make sure that you feel that the garage deck isn't really a garage. You really want to have that flavor. As big as it is, 8 stories, it still really steps down. The material is still rich. It really offers a little bit more than what a typical garage deck looks like. You know, we know it's going to be, whether it's going to be 8 stories or 6 stories, we really want to make sure that that's treated the same way. It does have such presence in this scenario. So again, you begin to see how this front 2 storage really is just real simple. After you create these little stoops, you start to activate that whole little animation along that edge. You really begin to break down this so it doesn't look like one monolithic building. It looks like it could have been built over a period of time, and that's really how we envision like Red Bank to be, the durability of that. Same thing, we even carried that to the necessity of what's actually happening within the garage deck in general. We do have the main entrance here, but again, you know, it is broken up, so it doesn't look like it's always been here. Like we want to make sure that all these portions are actually treated with great detail, you know, that are really rich detail that you actually see currently with the Red Bank. So if you could do that slide. Here you begin to pick up a little bit more of what we really intend. You begin to see how we use the metal roof. Certain edges here that are a little bit more modern edges here along some portions, but also there's great deal in which simple punched openings that are very classic in a sense with their use of the brick. And again, you begin to see how we create these certain little stoops where these are little dresses where people actually kind of activate the street and kind of make their way to Broad Street where everything's really active. Here we created the main entry to the rest of the building here. So again, it is 6 stories, as you can see. Whether the 6 stories is something we actually need to accommodate 170 units, I think that's what has to be negotiated, has been talked about with the township. That's the important part of what needs to happen here. These are really just concept drawings. Like we believe truly that the flavor of Red Bank, you know, it's going to be here for a long time. We intend to be a big part of it. We don't want to change anything, but we really want to add to what's actually happening. We believe that the architecture you see here is reminiscent of what is here already and what can be here for the future.
And to that end, as we move on in the slide, you're going to see that we actually decided to propose 3 options as part of our initial proposal. So, you know, you guys get a glimpse into the life of a developer where we probably went through 15 different concepts before we chose. But we thought it was important to demonstrate some flexibility and show you guys different options. Now, all 3 options are similar in total scale, but what varies is parking counts and residential density. So when Chuck goes to the next slide, you'll see how the parking count really affects the economic viability of the project. And so, you know, when Jim gets involved, he does a real thorough demand and supply analysis of parking in the borough. If the borough feels at the end of that process that maybe 700 or 800 spaces is a little too much and they want to go down, that can alter the scale of the project in either direction. It can have the residential go up, or it can have the residential go down. And so, as you'll see on the next slide, there are some differences in the concepts.
Yes, this is actually a 192 dwelling unit scheme. What it really did is we kind of reduced the garage to actually 700 spaces in total. So it allowed us to kind of extend the residential portion of the deck. Now again, knowing that the 190 units isn't necessary, we can always take the ability of taking that space and creating the outdoor spaces that are so necessary and so such a big, so big portion of what's actually happening there. So again, once we analyze the parking deck that true need, we have the ability to kind of push and pull what we actually need here. You know, we have the ability to kind of actually even shrink this building. If you go to the next slide. You know, this really is all one large residential building, and what we'll do is actually, you have the ability to kind of almost share and create a revenue stream with the city by providing the parking in here directly connected to that. There's public parking and residential parking that's used here by the residents of the proposed buildings.
Right, and this concept is higher in residential density. So this concept goes from the original 170 up to 250 with a total of 700 parking spaces, but out of those 700 parking spaces would be a shared scenario that Jim and his team would advise the borough on, and the borough would do their own investigation as well. What that accomplishes, I know everyone says, oh, well, the residential is just going up, but what that accomplishes, it makes the whole project much more financially attractive to the borough. At the end of the day, you'll be receiving much more in pilot payments and much more efficiency from your parking garage.
Here, as you can see, this is really just a quick slide to compare what you've actually seen, the original RFP concept, 170 dwelling units, 779 spaces, an alternate concept with 190 units, 700 spaces, and again, we actually go with 200, in the final concept, be 250 spaces with 250 dwelling units, 700 spaces in general. So I think it just shows the flexibility we can actually offer here. It's a good site. We really just depend on how feedback from you, how we want to use it, what it really needs, and how we want to continue.
I'm Jim Zulo, and in addition to advancing the slides, I am here to comment on the parking. It's all been touched upon, so I don't really want to belabor it, but this is, parking is critical to the financial feasibility of any project like this. And our firm has, we're pretty much up the East Coast. We've done projects, was mentioned before, in Princeton, Metuchen, Millburn, New Brunswick. And, we see parking as a real critical factor, and we recognize the parking problems that exist. It's obviously representative of a very healthy downtown. And I think what was mentioned, obviously the development scenarios meet the demands of the RFP, but I think very important to this is for us to really do a demand analysis. What are the actual real needs and how are they being used? Because not only when this garage gets developed, it's got to be operated to serve all the various functions in the downtown. And when you go to from a surface parking to a structure, it's always a challenge and the garage has to be designed to be very user-friendly, efficient. You've got theater activity. It's got to be designed so everything can get out quickly. It's got to be a great experience because it is, it is a very, very important part of the project. And we bring that operational understanding. We bring municipal parking issue operation. And I think very importantly, right sizing. You've heard some very big parking numbers here today. But I think what's very important is right sizing this garage for the future needs, not only of this project, but of downtown Red Bank, because the worst thing to the financial feasibility is you build too much parking, it sits, and it can be a real drain on a project. So again, that's part of the role. We certainly recognize the problems here. We certainly recognize the need to meet future parking demands, just not today, but in the future. But again, you don't want to overbuild your parking related to the financial feasibility and benefit to Red Bank.
So that's pretty much the proposal on the presentation. And thank you for having us. Mill Creek is very excited about the opportunity. We love Red Bank, and we would love to be here. And thank you for your time.